Welcome to Business Talk Sister Gawk. I'm Becca, and today's podcast episode is how to start a mushroom foraging business. And this is actually a sequential podcast to the previous episode to this. So if you want to hear more about how Cliff got started in harvesting and gathering mushrooms and all of that, you should definitely check out the episode right before this. Cliff, thank you so much for being back with me.
Yeah, I enjoyed the first one. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. So as we're talking through right now, in the previous episode, we talked a little bit about the spring and summer mushrooms, and we only got to like 3 of so many mushrooms.
Right.
So now we're getting into the late summer and fall. What are some things that people should be looking for or thinking about in that season?
Well, the late summer and fall, it's funny. You just have less and less people in the landscape because that's when things kind of get tough. You got heavy mosquitoes and you also got heavy wood ticks. And with that note, I just want to put that out as a cautionary tale: is that Lyme's disease really is a big deal, and I spray my clothing with pheromone spray that lasts for 2 weeks at a shot, and I wear the same clothes over and over again. Because once you soak them down, you really want to avoid. I've got 2 different friends who've got Lyme's disease, and I want to avoid that. I haven't had it, don't want it. But that combined with the massive amounts of mosquitoes on a normal year, you don't see too many people. And I just wanted to get that out there. What was your original question?
It was to talk about the late summer and fall mushrooms that people should be paying attention to.
So as we get into, late summer, the chanterelle mushroom is really a big one. That's a big seller, very popular mushroom. In broad strokes, it's a mycorrhizal mushroom, which again means that it has relationship with specific trees. In the case of a chanterelle, you're looking at birch, ironwood, and oak are primary trees in this zone. As you go north of Highway 210, then you're looking at white pine and red pine. So it's a different habitat up there. But those type of mushrooms, after the morel, they're the most popular mushroom in Minnesota. They'd be number 2.
And they're very tasty.
They are. I mean, as many morels as I gather, I don't eat a lot because they end up selling them all. I always eat the big ones, the ugly ones, the ones that are on the edge of spoiling. I'll eat those. But with chanterelles, the price point is half of what a morel costs, and in my opinion, I think they're better.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much every single one of them I've tasted is excellent in butter. So
Yeah, you can't go wrong with butter, and that's I know we somewhere in here we're talking about recipes, and bottom line is most people saute mushrooms. With the chanterelle, there's a really good cream sauce recipe that I've got on a laminated card on the table that people take pictures of, which is really a good recipe. But the chanterelle has just got such a flavor to it. It isn't your typical mushroom flavor, whereas a morel has a deep, earthy mushroom flavor. The chanterelle is more of a sweeter, tangy flavor.
And I would say that the recipes you have also really contribute to a lot of your customers' positive experience with mushrooms, because that was the first mushroom I had tried from you, was the chanterelles with the recipe. My sister actually took a picture of it and sent it to me. So I would say that that's a good marketing tip if you're going to be doing this type of business. And so tell me a little bit about what other mushrooms, what should you be looking for in that season, and how do you pay attention to what's happening within the weather?
Well, I guess the other mushrooms at that time of the summer, you got the chanterelles. You've always got the oyster mushrooms out there that I'm watching for. And then you've also got a couple oddballs called the black trumpet. You don't find a lot of those. The price point's quite high if you can find them. But that one's a very interesting one. Grows in similar habitat to chanterelles. And then there's another one called a yellowfoot. That is a subspecies of a chanterelle, much smaller. It grows more up north. And then a final one before we get into fall is it's called a hedgehog mushroom. That'll be late summer, early fall.
What do hedgehog mushrooms grow around typically?
Well, I find them, same spots every year. And that's kind of the cool thing about mushroom, the mushroom foraging is that when you find a spot, it's there for a reason. That mycelium's in the soil, so it'll be back year after year if the conditions are right. So as you progressively do it more and more, and you get more spots, it becomes easier because you know where to go. In the case of hedgehogs, it's mainly oak, ironwood, kind of same type of chanterelle type habitat, but they're late summer, so you won't see them at all, and then all of a sudden you'll get a rain event, and bang, they'll pop up, and they're a real
Hmm.
nutty flavored mushroom. They've
Hmm.
got little appendages that hang down, almost look like teeth. It's the only mushroom in Minnesota that has that type of
Yeah.
appendage.
Well, and the
And
first time I saw them, honestly, they look like something out of a storybook because it looks like almost those, like you're in a cave of like stalactites or something hanging,
yeah, yeah, and
or stalagmites. I don't know which one's the ones falling down,
that's
but
what they kind of look like, and that's why it's on the 12 that you can sell, is that there's nothing else that mimics that. You can't mess that up.
hmm. Yeah, and so now that we've kind of gone through those ones, I just wanted to make a note here, for efficiency's sake. Do you use kind of like Google Map pins or anything like that to save your locations for next time?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I meant to get to that. When I first started that, I thought that I would have to do that. And I'm not sure why I'm able to do this. Probably resulting from, starting off in the woods hunting at a very young age, probably 7 or 8. But I'm able to, when I go back to a spot, I can get to within 50 feet of pretty much anything I find out there from a previous year. And I can mentally sit and think of an area now, and I can go patch by patch, almost tree by tree. And I don't know how to tell somebody how to train themselves to do that. It's more, I think, from bow hunting, elk hunting, those kind of things where you really needed to find your stand location, your camp, running off compass, however you're doing it. I think you fine tune, the ability in your brain to look around and make a mental map. So no, I don't. I keep a list of my spots, but I don't GPS it. I don't need to do that, but I don't think that's real common. And I'm not sure how to tell somebody to train themselves.
Well, for the rest of us that don't have those natural instincts, I think I've definitely used pins and saved them. But so I know that that works pretty well for me. But the other thing I was gonna recommend for those of you who want to use GPS mapping is also make sure your phone is charged, because I
Yeah.
have definitely gotten lost on a low battery and couldn't find the rest of the people I was foraging with. And I literally just had to sit down and wait there for a very long time till somebody came and found me.
Well, yeah, you're lucky, you have, yeah, somebody along. I'm almost always alone. And on that note, always carry a compass.
Mm,
You can always have failure. I mean, I do carry GPS if I'm going, way in some big country, so I can always find my truck. But the key on that too is you've got, if you get in a heavy canopy where a lot of the area that you're in is heavy, the GPS, your signal doesn't always get out. So having a handheld
mm-hmm.
compass is huge, especially on cloudy days. Um, so with that said, there's kind of a list of things I bring along for safety, and one of them is a compass. The other one is I've always got a basic first aid kit along.
Mm.
A little bit of duct tape goes a long way on a wound, and you want to be prepared for that, because I mean, you're in brush and heavy stuff, and I've gotten dinged up a few times doing it, and so having a first aid kit and a phone is a pretty handy item.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a good tip on carrying those things. So tell me a little bit about the fall. What does that look like?
Well, we totally shift now in the fall again, and it's that's what I kind of like about it, is it's totally different. There's the fall mushrooms that I'm really after are maitake. That's a mushroom that grows primarily at the base of oak trees, and it's saprotrophic, so that, which means it is actually feeding off an oak root. It taps into that root, and they can get anywhere.
Hmm.
An average one is 3 to 5 pounds, but I've gotten them up to 18 pounds.
Whoa. Are you
Yeah,
serious?
huge, huge.
Wow. Wow.
And I in the classes I took, he had a picture of one that was 64 pounds. That's the biggest one he'd ever gotten, and
Oh
I mean
my
it
goodness.
was absolutely enormous. And I guess what I really like about them is they're much more. You can almost depend on them. If you got rain and you know where they've been in the past, they're probably going to be there again when the timing's right. So again, you get a lot better at this over time. Where when you start, you're just randomly going out and looking versus many years down the road. If you've got 300 trees that have produced, it's like running a trap line when the time's right.
Okay. Yeah. So what other ones? Is the fall,
Okay.
is would that be King Belit, or is that
Well,
a
the
different time?
king bolete is the porcini.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't know they were the same. Never
yep,
mind. Okay.
yep. So the porcini is like the Italian name, which out of interest, that's the number one, cooking mushroom in Italian cuisine. But yet they grow right here in Minnesota.
Hmm.
But that is the king bolete, is a porcini, the same mushroom. The other ones you look for in the fall are lobster mushrooms, which
Hmm.
those are way cool. They're really bright orange. Again, you can't mistake them. Well, I shouldn't say you can. If you've taken the training classes, you won't mistake them. But they're bright orange and they're dense like cork almost.
Mm-hmm.
And the really interesting thing, and I know we're limited on time, but interesting thing about a lobster mushroom, it starts out as a Rossella mushroom, which means as it's growing underground, it's a Rossella. And there's a certain bacteria in the soil that actually attacks that Rossella mushroom. And by the time it emerges, it's a lobster mushroom. And that's strange, but that's how it
Yeah.
works.
It's almost like a zombie mushroom.
Yeah, it's really strange. And again, the key is once you find them in one spot, mark that spot because they'll be back. That bacteria is there. As long as the Rosellas show up,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get lobsters. Um, and then down the list, there's a mushroom called a cloud mushroom. Gather them a lot, and that's getting late fall. Um, and then there's chaga. I gather a lot of chaga in the fall as well.
Oh, really? Okay. And tell me what you look for the shaga.
Well, chaga, it's unique that it primarily only grows on birch. That's where I found it. And what you're looking at is the birch has had an injury at that site. So, imagine another tree falling, it shears off a branch on
Mm.
that birch. Well, it creates an injury site, and that's where the chaga will grow. And over a decade and a half, it'll eventually kill the tree. It creates heart rot, but it looks like a big black chunk of charcoal, really. And it's rock hard. And to get it, a lot of times they have tree climbing spikes to get it. Um, but that particular mushroom, you don't eat it. You actually turn it into a tea. So
Mm-hmm.
there's quite a number of steps. It's wet when you get it, and then so you chop it up into chunks, dry it really good, and then you chop it into smaller chunks. And you have to grind it into a powder to make it into the tea.
Mm-hmm. And in my experience, so there's only a couple places in the world that mushroom grows. A lot of Russia, and then I think it's like the climate has to be where it gets down to like 30 or 40 below Fahrenheit in order for it to grow on those trees.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I understand. And I found it when I'm moose hunting up in Canada. I found it up there. So it has to be a cold climate, and it varies in size. I mean, I found it as small as a pound, but I've also found spots that's 25 pounds. So, and
mhm.
that's really old. I mean, because it grows year after year. It's like layers on a tree. It keeps growing out. So if you see a big one, that could be a 15-year-old mushroom.
Yeah, well, and a couple, I'm totally a nerd when it comes to, I want to know how it tastes. I want to know like all that kind of stuff. So, in my experience with chaga specifically, um, I've always been told you should mix it with like maple syrup or something because it already has like a woody, smoky flavor to it.
Yep.
And then I didn't know this until more recently, but it has almost like a natural ibuprofen to it where it's like a muscle pain relaxant or whatever to like help with achy joints and stuff. So there's
Yeah.
some really interesting medicinal qualities about different mushrooms.
Well, and I can attest to that. I got a friend that has really bad knees, and he drinks it for that purpose. Is that it does take away from his knee pain, and he doesn't have to take ibuprofen as much. I've done the same. I usually mix it with honey. I like it with a little honey. It's got that kind of that earthy flavor, but I have quite a few people that buy it that just drink it straight as well. And I think the
Hmm.
main claim, it's got that painkiller effect, but it also has a high number of antioxidants and vitamins in it. You always
Mm-hmm.
take it in the fall when the tree is drawing in nutrition for the winter. So it's quite high in those things.
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip because I think you can, I mean, it's on the tree for a super long time, but the best time to harvest would be fall.
Well,
Interesting.
yeah, in the fall, yeah, and yeah, because that's when the tree is drawing in the nutrition, and so I take it in the fall. And the cool thing is, I went back to some of my spots that I harvested, say, 7 years ago, and it grows back. It did not kill it. The chaga that I'd harvested, there was enough on it to harvest it again. So when you chop it off the tree, it doesn't kill the mushroom.
Yeah, and in my experience, I've usually brought like a little hatchet with because otherwise I can't pull it off the tree.
No, yeah, that's where you gotta be careful again is, you're up on tree spikes, sometimes 20 feet up on tree climbers swinging a hatchet. There's a lot of bad things that can happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it is, I usually get it when I'm grouse hunting. I think I've missed a lot of grouse looking for it because you're looking up in the trees and you should be watching your dog.
Right.
But yeah, it's a fun mushroom.
Yeah. So are there any websites or books or resource communities that you use and would recommend people check out as they're trying to get into foraging?
Well, I learned mainly through, the classes I took and then, my own looking things up on the website. And there's so many mushroom websites you can look at. But I do have two books that I do use. And let me just walk over and grab them. I'll read you the titles.
Okay, perfect.
All right. The first one that I started with that it gave me a start on 6 edible mushrooms, in the Midwest. It's called Start Mushrooming, and it's by Stan. The last name is Tekiela, by Stan Tekiela, and Karen Schanberg, Shanberg. Those cover 6 of the basic ones in the Midwest that are on the list that are safe. That
Mm-hmm.
was a real good start. And then I guess the other one I've got is the National Audubon Society Field Guide to Mushrooms. And that one's much more in depth. It has hundreds of different types. But for somebody who's just looking at dabbling into it, that short one with the first 6, yeah, that'll get you going.
Okay. No, yeah, that's super helpful. So if you were to start over again, what would be the biggest thing you would want to learn first to make your experience more successful in finding mushrooms?
Well, I think the number one thing is I wish I would have taken the training courses earlier than I did. It would have taken a lot of the struggle out of it. However, I'm doing it at, a much higher level, for poundage. The average person is just going out and just having an enjoyable afternoon, doesn't really need that. But I think probably the key was that I met a couple people in those classes that, really helped me. The hard part is when you think you got it down and you find what you think you got, like take the case of a chanterelle. Do you really want to eat that mushroom before somebody who really does know what they're doing identifies it? And the answer is no. So,
Hmm.
there's an old saying, if in doubt, throw it out. And I run by that. Any doubt, I don't take it. And so that was probably key, is meeting somebody that can verify what you have. And so the
Hmm.
training courses would have been handy earlier.
Yeah. So tell me again in this episode, how can people find you?
They can, call or text. It's Cliff's Mushrooms, 320-424-2419. And, I get back to people immediately within the day. So, a lot of times I'll be out in the woods, but then I'll have a series of messages and I'll get right back to folks. And I'm almost always have something fresh on hand once it gets warm.
I'm excited for that for sure. Now we're going to transition to the gawk portion of this episode.
Okay.
And you're going to tell me a little bit about mushroom safety experience you had.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have a friend, he'll remain nameless, that, when I was just kind of getting into this, going through training classes, he was up grouse hunting and he got what he was sure was a chicken of the woods mushroom. And he was with his girlfriend. And the sad part about it is a chicken of the woods mushroom is a polypore. And what that means is it's got tiny little holes under it. It doesn't have gills. And what he picked was called a jack-o'-lantern mushroom, and it has gills.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it grows on wood like a chicken of the woods. But if you know the basics, I mean, since it has gills, it's not a chicken of the woods. Well, long story short, they shot a couple grouse, and it's only funny now. He went back, and his girlfriend made the grouse and the mushrooms all in a pan, and she took 2 bites and went, they don't taste that great. And he was really hungry, so he wolfed down a whole plate of grouse and these mushrooms. And it didn't take long. Within a half an hour, he was puking both ends, and that went on for 3 days for him. And he got so sick that his nail beds turned black.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, really bad. And to this day, his girlfriend will not even eat a mushroom from me. She she took the lesson to heart and just doesn't do it. But in looking at that scenario, that's why you definitely want to, when you're new into it, verify that with somebody who really knows what they're doing. And I've got another cautionary tale that's worse than that one. I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah, go for it. I want to hear it.
Okay, another cautionary tale. Here's where people can get themselves in trouble. When you change regions, if I say I went to another state or another country, that mushroom ability you have in Minnesota does not necessarily transfer. And here's the following story. There was a group of Hmong people that moved to this country. This is a number of years ago, and in their home country, they harvested a white-looking mushroom that they knew what they were doing there. Well, they got here, and there's a mushroom called the angel of death cap.
Oh no.
It's white, and in its young stage, it looked very similar to their mushroom in the Hmong country. And I forget the exact numbers, but I think five of the Hmong people ate them, and 2 died. The other ones came real close. So that's a cautionary tale where regionally, mushrooms can vary. And so when you get outside of your zone where you know what you're doing, I would never gather mushrooms in another country for that reason,
Yeah, that's actually, I had that as a note because when I went to Finland, I was at a farmer's market and they had these mushrooms that looked almost exactly like false morels. And I was stunned that they would even have that in the market. And so I tried to, and there was a language barrier. So I was trying to ask, how do you make these? And and honestly, full disclosure here, I am not the mushroom guru in my family. It's my husband. And so, but he was like, no, we're not going to harvest those and do that at home. That's a bad plan.
Well,
so that's good advice.
Yeah, you want to be real careful. And I've had a lot of people that, over time I've helped, identify things in that. And quite often what people find is they go out thinking they're going to, do this. And between the bugs and the heat and, just not finding what they're looking for, it's easier to buy them from me. So I get a lot of those type of folks coming back. And so I'm happy to help people, because that was key for me. I mean, just having somebody to tell you, do you have, what you think it is, or is that a jack-o'-lantern? That's huge.
And I think that's a good business tip overall is just, people say, oh, I can go do that for cheaper. But the reality is, what is their time worth? And is it really like the risk that they want to take personally? Right.
Well, and that's the truth. Boy, I've had people say, $50 a pound for morels. I mean, that's outrageous. I've heard that. And I, explained to them then, okay, go find them. I can even tell you the types of habitat to look for. You go spend a week and see what you find. And you'll probably be back. And, a lot of those folks have. And, it is fun if you're just doing it for a good time, but yeah, to really go on the landscape and find a large number of them, there's quite a bit of work to it.
Well, thank you for joining me today. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Well, I have two, and it kind of gets me through this long winter. I'm ready to roll. It's been a month. I've been waiting for spring to break, so yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. And if you have enjoyed this episode, you should give it a review on Spotify, and I will see you next time.
Thank you very much.